My name is Victoria, and I was 39 years old when this happened. At Christmas, my niece opened my gift, laughed, and said, "An iPad mini? That's all I get?" Then she threw it at me. I stood up calmly, gathered every gift I had brought, 16 wrapped boxes, and carried them back to my car. Dad yelled, "Don't be dramatic." I replied, "I'm not, but tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm updating the mortgage autopay." He went silent. That morning, I had been standing in my parents' living room holding a mug of lukewarm coffee when my niece tore open my gift, stared at it for half a second, and then laughed as if I had handed her a used sock. She lifted the box so everyone could see. "An iPad mini," she said loudly and clearly. "That's all I get?" Before I could even process the words, she tossed it straight at my chest. It wasn't hard enough to hurt, but it was hard enough to make a point. The room erupted into that uncomfortable kind of laughter, the kind of people use when they don't want to admit something ugly just happened. My son, Ethan, was sitting cross-legged on the rug near the tree. He flinched as if the iPad had hit him instead of me. Ethan was 8, quiet, polite, the kind of kid who says, "Excuse me," if he needs to walk past you. He had spent the entire drive over talking about how maybe Grandpa would finally hang his drawing on the fridge this year. I looked down and saw Ethan's hands tighten around the small paper snowflake he had brought as a gift for Grandma. My mom didn't say a word. She simply took a sip of her mimosa and smiled as if this were cute. My sister Kara actually smirked, as though her daughter had just delivered a punchline. My dad leaned back in his recliner and said, "She's just being honest." My throat tightened. I didn't yell. I didn't do anything dramatic. I simply stood up, walked over to the pile of wrapped gifts I had brought, 16 boxes, all neatly labeled, all chosen with care, and began picking them up one by one. Tape crinkled beneath my fingers. A bow slipped loose. Kara blinked as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Victoria, what are you doing?" she asked. I didn't respond. I kept gathering the gifts. They were for everyone: my parents, my sister and her husband, my niece, my nephew, my cousins who always happened to stop by, even my dad's neighbor who somehow always ended up at family holidays and always left with a bottle of something expensive. I had bought for all of them anyway, because that's what I did. I stacked the boxes in my arms until I could barely see over them, then made 2 trips out to my car. Behind me, my dad finally raised his voice. "Don't be dramatic," he shouted, as if I had just knocked over the tree. I turned back at the door, keys in my hand, as calm as I could possibly be. "I'm not." Then I added the one sentence that changed the temperature of the entire room. "But tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm updating the mortgage autopay." He went silent. My dad fell silent so quickly it was almost amusing. Not another laugh, not another smirk, just the sound of wrapping paper settling and the low hum of the heater turning on. Ethan stood up slowly and walked to my side without me calling him. He didn't ask any questions. He simply slipped his small hand into mine as if he already understood this wasn't about one iPad. As we walked out, I heard Kara mutter, "You're really going to ruin Christmas over a joke?" I didn't look back, because that wasn't the joke. The joke was how long I had allowed them to use me. I lived in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I was a dentist with a small practice, and I worked more hours than I cared to admit. I was also a single mom. Ethan's father left when Ethan was 3. There was no dramatic story, just a slow fade into, "I can't do this anymore." And then he was gone. So it was just me and Ethan. Homework at the kitchen table, Saturday morning pancakes, school concerts where I clapped too loudly because I knew I was the only parent there for him. And if you ask anyone in my family, I was the stable one. That meant I had the dependable income, which in my family translated to one thing: wallet. It started small, as it always does. My parents needed help after my dad retired early. He called it retirement. I called it quitting after he got into a fight with his boss and refused to work under anyone again. Their mortgage wasn't paid off, not even close. So I stepped in. I set up the auto pay for my account because Dad didn't trust online banking. Every month, the payment went out like clockwork, $1,842.17. At first, my mom said, "Thank you." Then it became normal. Then it became expected. Eventually, it became something they acted as if they had earned. If the payment ever processed a day late because of a holiday, my dad would text me as though I had committed a crime. "Mortgage didn't go through. Fix it." No hey, no hope you're okay, just that. And it wasn't only the mortgage, it was the property taxes. Just this once. It was their HVAC replacement when it failed in July. It was my mom's dental implants, which she insisted she shouldn't have to pay for because I was a dentist. Then there were Kara's emergencies. Kara was 36, married with 2 kids, constantly struggling, constantly just about to get back on her feet. One month it was the minivan payment. Another month it was private dance lessons for my niece because she's talented. Victoria, don't crush her dreams. Another month it was their credit card minimum because they'd had a tough season. I helped because I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was family. And every time I tried to pull back even slightly, something would happen. A comment, a slight, a reminder that Ethan and I were guests in this family, not truly part of its center. Ethan noticed things long before I wanted him to. He noticed that Grandma always had his cousin's favorite snacks, but never his. He noticed that his cousins had big matching stockings with their names stitched on them, and he got a plain red one someone had bought at the last minute. He noticed that during family photos, Kara's kids were pulled into the middle and Ethan was placed at the edge like an accessory. He never complained. He just grew quieter. One Thanksgiving, when he was 6, my mom handed out slices of pie. My nephew received the largest slice. My niece got whipped cream shaped into a perfect swirl. Ethan received a thin piece with the crust broken off. He didn't cry. He simply whispered to me, "It's okay, Mom. I don't need much." That sentence hit me harder than anything. No child should learn to shrink to survive family time. But I kept going anyway. I kept paying, kept showing up, kept buying gifts that were too expensive for people who barely acted as if they liked us. I thought if I stayed generous, they would stay kind. I thought if I remained useful, they would remain loving. I didn't want to admit the truth. They weren't loving. They were comfortable. That Christmas morning wasn't the first sign, it was simply the clearest. That night, back at our house, I didn't decorate more. I didn't force cheer. I made Ethan grilled cheese and tomato soup. He sat at the kitchen island, still wearing his Christmas sweater, rubbing the edge of his paper snowflake between his fingers. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. That question cracked something inside me. I set my bowl down and took a breath. "No," I said, "you didn't do anything wrong." He nodded as though he wanted to believe me, but didn't fully. After he went to bed, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator hum and the heater click. I logged into my bank account. There it was, the recurring payment, mortgage autopay, $1,842.17, scheduled monthly. I hovered over it for a moment. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't doing this out of anger. I was doing it out of clarity. I clicked Edit Payment. I changed the funding account from my checking to nothing. Then I clicked Cancel Autopay. A warning appeared. Canceling this recurring payment may result in missed payments. I stared at it. Then I clicked Confirm. Your recurring payment has been canceled. I took a screenshot, and for the first time in years, I slept without dread. The next morning, I set my alarm for 8:45 a.m., not because I had more to do with the bank, but because I knew the moment my dad woke up and checked his account, the panic would begin, and I wanted to be awake and steady when it did. At 9:07 a.m., my phone rang. "Dad." I let it ring twice, then answered. "Morning," I said. No warmth, no anger, just a statement. His voice was sharp and tight. "What did you do?" I didn't pretend not to understand. "I canceled the autopay." There was a brief silence, then he snapped. "You can't do that." I almost laughed. He said it as if the mortgage belonged to me, as if I were canceling my own obligation. "It's your mortgage," I said. "You can pay it." My mom's voice came through in the background, muffled but frantic. "What is he saying? Tell her to stop." Dad lowered his voice, trying to sound reasonable. Victoria, you're upset. Fine. But you don't punish us over a kid's comment. There it was, a kid's comment, as if my niece throwing a $500 gift at me were normal, as if everyone laughing while Ethan sat there shrinking were harmless. I kept my voice steady. It wasn't one comment, I said. It's been years. He tried to interrupt. I continued anyway. You don't get to treat my son like he's optional and still expect me to fund your life. Dad exhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. The same word as yesterday. The same script. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the Christmas tree in our living room, smaller than my parents', slightly lopsided, covered in Ethan's handmade ornaments. I'm not, I said. I'm just done. My dad's tone shifted quickly, not softer, but desperate. Victoria, we counted on you. Of course they did. That was the whole problem. You shouldn't have, I said. He raised his voice again. So what? You're cutting us off all because Kara's kid mouthed off? I didn't take the bait. I'm not your backup bank, I said, and Ethan and I won't be spending holidays where we're laughed at. He went quiet, not because he understood, but because he was calculating. My mom took the phone, her voice shaky as though she were about to cry. Victoria, honey, please, we didn't mean anything by it. She's a teenager. You know how kids are. I stared at the wall, remembering Ethan's face. I know how my kid is, I said. He's kind, he's quiet, he tries hard, and you all make him feel small. She sniffed. So what do we do? That question almost made me laugh, because it wasn't, how do we fix what we did to Ethan? It was, how do we fix the money problem? You figure it out, I said. Then, because I still wasn't cruel, I added, I'm not blocking you, I'm not screaming, but the money is done. That's the boundary. My mom whispered, this is going to ruin the family. I swallowed. No, I said. You did that. I'm just not paying for it anymore. Then I ended the call. The fallout came in waves. First, Dad called repeatedly, as if enough calls would make me fold. Then Kara started texting paragraphs. You embarrassed my daughter. She didn't mean it like that. You're acting like some hero. Mom is crying. Then the guilt trips became more specific. Victoria, do you know what happens if Dad misses the mortgage? They could lose the house. I stared at that message for a long time, because I did know. I had known for years. That was why I had kept paying, why I had allowed them to use me. But then I looked at Ethan sitting on the floor building a Lego set, humming to himself, finally relaxed because we weren't driving to someone else's house just to be tolerated. And I realized something simple. If my parents lost the house, it wouldn't be because I stopped paying. It would be because they'd built their entire life around assuming I always would. That wasn't my emergency anymore. Kara showed up at my office 2 days later, not for a dental appointment, but storming into my waiting room as if she owned the place. My receptionist's eyes widened. It's fine, I said, standing up. I walked Kara into my private office and closed the door. She didn't sit. She crossed her arms. So you're really doing this? Yes, I said. Her voice cracked, not from sadness, but from anger. You're punishing Mom and Dad because my daughter didn't like a gift. I blinked slowly. That's not what happened, I said, and you know it. She scoffed. She's a teenager. She's dramatic. She didn't throw it hard. I stared at Kara until she grew uncomfortable. Ethan was sitting right there, I said, and everyone laughed. She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, Victoria, he's a kid. He'll forget. That sentence made my stomach turn. Kids remember the feeling. They remember who protected them. They remember who didn't. I didn't raise my voice. You don't get to decide what my son forgets. Kara's face tightened. Then she tried a new angle. So what? You're going to let them lose everything after all they did for you? I kept it simple. I've been doing a lot for them for years, I said, and they've been taking it while treating Ethan like he's less. Her eyes flicked away for half a second. She knew. Then she did what Kara always did when she couldn't win on facts. You're always so high and mighty because you're a dentist, she said, like you're better than us. I felt my jaw clench, but I remained steady. I don't think I'm better, I said. I think my son deserves better. Kara opened her mouth, closed it, then said the quiet part out loud. So what am I supposed to do when I need help? There it was. Not I'm sorry, not Ethan was hurt, just money. You budget, I said. You figure it out like every other adult. Her face turned red. You're unbelievable. I walked to the door and opened it. I'm not arguing, I said. This conversation is over. She stood there as if she expected me to chase after her. I didn't. After she left, my receptionist whispered, "Are you okay?" "I am," I said. For the first time in a long time, I meant it. The next week was a flood of messages. Dad left a voicemail, stiff and offended. "You don't do this to your parents." Mom left one that was softer but still wrong. "We're family. Family helps family." I didn't call back. Boundaries aren't negotiations. The only person I explained things to was Ethan. We were brushing our teeth one night when he asked, "Are we going to Grandma's again?" I looked at him in the mirror. "No," I said, "not for a while." He paused, toothbrush in his mouth. "Did they not want us there?" My throat tightened, but I didn't lie. "Sometimes people don't know how to be kind," I said, "and I'm not going to put you in places that make you feel bad." He swallowed, then nodded. "Okay," he said. "Can we do Christmas at home next year with pancakes?" I smiled. "With pancakes." He promised. In January, the consequences became real for them. Dad missed the first payment, not because he couldn't gather anything, but because he thought I would panic and fix it. Instead, he received a late notice, then another. Then he called again, his voice shaking with anger. "You're really going to let this happen? You're really going to let your own mortgage?" "Your mortgage," I corrected. He cursed under his breath. Then came the next level of manipulation. My aunt called to mediate. "Your parents are stressed. Your dad's blood pressure." "I'm not discussing their health as a bargaining chip," I said gently. She huffed. "You know they love you." "Love doesn't look like humiliating my kid and expecting me to keep funding them," I said. She went quiet. "So you're really cutting them off?" "Yes," I said. She sighed as if I had disappointed her. "I hope you can live with yourself." I looked at Ethan across the room, peaceful. "I can," I said. By spring, my parents refinanced, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And that's when the apologies began. They weren't real apologies. They were convenient ones. My mom showed up at my house one Saturday with a grocery store pie and watery eyes. Ethan was in the backyard throwing a tennis ball for our dog. She stood on my porch and said, "Can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She looked offended by that, as if she were entitled to my living room. "I'm sorry about Christmas," she said quickly. "It got out of hand." I waited. "Your niece was rude." Still waiting. Then she said, "We didn't mean to hurt Ethan." That was the closest she had come to saying his name in weeks. I nutted once. "Okay." She blinked. "That's it? What do you want me to say?" "I want you to understand, but I don't think you do." Her eyes filled. "I want things to go back." "No," I said. "They can't." "Victoria, you're being so cold." "I'm being safe for my son." Her mouth tightened. "So you're going to punish us forever." "This isn't punishment," I said. "It's a consequence. You don't get access to Ethan if you treat him like an afterthought, and you don't get access to my money at all." She whispered, "Your father is heartbroken." I believed he was upset. I didn't believe he was heartbroken for the right reasons. "I won't fund a family my kid isn't part of," I said. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she looked past me toward the backyard, where Ethan was laughing because the dog had stolen his glove. For the first time, I saw something flicker across her face. Not a full apology, but something close to shame. "Can I at least say hi to him?" she asked. I thought about it, then said, "Not today." Her face crumpled, but I didn't feel guilty. I wasn't doing this to hurt her. I was doing it to protect Ethan from learning that love means accepting whatever scraps you're given. She left the pie on the porch anyway. I threw it away after she drove off. Not dramatically, just quietly, the way you do when something is no longer yours. The real closure came the next Christmas. It was just me and Ethan. We stayed home, we made pancakes, we put up our small, slightly lopsided tree and hung every paper ornament Ethan had ever made, including the one he'd brought to my parents' house the year before. He taped a new drawing to our fridge. This time, it was our house, just the two of us, a dog, a tree, and a large speech bubble that said, "Merry Christmas." No grandparents, no cousins, no forced smiles. Later that afternoon, my cousin Leah stopped by with her teenage son. She was the only person in my family who had texted after Christmas and said, "I saw what happened. I'm sorry." She handed Ethan a small gift bag. Inside was a sketchbook and a set of colored pencils. His eyes lit up as if someone had switched him back on. Leah looked at me and said softly, "You did the right thing." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I sat in the living room with the tree lights glowing and my phone face down on the table. There were no missed calls, no guilt texts, just quiet. And in that quiet, I finally understood what I had been buying all those years with my money. I had been buying access. I had been buying temporary peace. I had been buying my way into rooms that didn't actually want us. So I stopped. And the funny thing was, once I stopped paying, the peace didn't disappear. It improved because for the first time, the peace was real. I walked into Ethan's room to check on him. He was asleep with his new sketchbook resting on the pillow beside him like treasure. I pulled the blanket up over his shoulder and whispered the promise I should have made sooner. "You'll never have to earn your place with me." Then I turned off the light and closed the door. Quiet, simple, done. Author's note. I'm with Victoria, not because a gift was rejected, but because her son watched a room treat disrespect as entertainment and call it honesty. A parent's first job is safety, and that includes emotional safety. When support turns into entitlement, it stops being care and becomes a demand. The lesson is simple. Generosity needs boundaries, or it trains people to take and trains children to stay quiet just to survive. Victoria stayed calm, ended the open-ended money pipeline, and chose a peaceful home for Ethan. Takeaways. Keep financial help separate from daily banking. Use secure logins, alerts, and two-factor authentication. Put any ongoing support in writing with clear amounts, dates, and a firm endpoint. Save records and screenshots, not for drama, but for clarity. And if the pattern doesn't change, set a deadline, communicate it once, and follow through.